West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Glenn, we got some surprise news out of the New York courtroom today where Donald Trump is awaiting sentencing that may actually have a big impact on his September 18th sentencing. So first off, can you explain what just happened in New York?
Yeah, Brian, so Donald Trump is so desperate to avoid the sentencing that is coming up on September 18th. That's for his 34 felony convictions for the crimes he committed to cheat in the 2016 presidential election, that he just tried a second time to get his case removed, meaning transferred from New York State Court into New York Federal Court. Importantly, he tried to do this about a year ago. And the federal judge who caught this assignment, Judge Hellerstein, had a hearing and said, no, making these hush money payments and then falsifying business records to cover them up are not official presidential acts, which interestingly, Brian, we've heard a lot about official presidential acts recently because of the Supreme Court opinion. Well, anytime a federal government employee or officer wants to try to get their case moved from state court into federal court, they have to prove what? That these were official governmental duties. So there are a lot of parallels and similarities between these two issues. And Judge Hellerstein said, Donald Trump, a year ago, you tried to pull this same thing, and I ruled after a hearing that none of what you did constituted an official presidential act, so I denied your request, and that's why Donald Trump had to go to trial in New York, got convicted in a New York minute on those 34 felony counts, and is now pending sentencing. Well, Donald Trump tried it again. He said, wait, Judge Hellerstein, everything has changed because the Supreme Court has now said I have absolute immunity for official presidential acts. And our viewers, Brian, can probably already see where I'm going with this. And let me just read a couple of choice lines from Judge Hellerstein's 3-page judicial smackdown of Donald Trump's most recent attempt to pull his case out of New York court and put it in federal court. First of all, not surprisingly, what Donald Trump's lawyers filed sounded a lot like a 2 a.m. Donald Trump post. Why? Because what they do is they say, Judge Merchan was so unfair. He was so conflicted. We didn't get a fair trial. And here is how Judge Hellerstein handled that argument. He said, this court does not have jurisdiction to hear Mr. Trump's arguments concerning the propriety of the New York trial. District courts, federal courts, may not reverse or modify state court judgments. And then he said, accordingly, this argument doesn't even merit my attention. You gotta love that. He cut right to the chase. Now, he turned to the second argument. The second argument was, well, Judge Hellerstein, everything has changed because of the Supreme Court ruling saying I have presidential immunity for official acts. And here is how Judge Hellerstein rejected that claim. He said, I held in my order and opinion of July 19, 2023, about a year ago, that hush money paid to an adult film star is not related to a president's official acts. It does not reflect in any way the color of the president's official duties. My holding of a hush money reimbursement remains true, and nothing in the Supreme Court opinion affects my previous conclusion that the hush money payments were private, unofficial acts outside the bounds of executive authority. He therefore rejects it and orders his clerk to dismiss this motion from Donald Trump. And Brian, it's important for a couple of reasons, because there's some really great foreshadowing in there about how the courts should look at Donald Trump's claim that the things he did were official presidential acts. So therefore, in the wake of the Supreme Court ruling, he should get a pass, a get out of jail free card. He should get immunity. Well, Judge Hellerstein seems to have laid that to rest pretty definitively.
Glenn, can you talk about the likelihood or the impact that this is going to have, rather, on Donald Trump's sentencing on September 18th? Both the fact that Donald Trump's effort to have this removed to the federal court system failed, but then also more broadly the likelihood of sentencing happening on the 18th anyway.
Yeah, so great question. So first of all, this actually clears a hurdle away, right? Donald Trump had tried desperately to get this case pulled out of state court, put into federal court. Judge Hellerstein would have none of it. So if Judge Hellerstein had granted the motion, it probably would have put a stop to the upcoming sentencing date for Donald Trump. So another hurdle now cleared away. Then the second question is a little bit tougher to answer definitively. Will he go to sentencing on September 18th? I wish I could say I'm confident that he will, but here's my concern, Brian. On September 16th, Judge Merchan said he will issue his opinion on presidential immunity. In other words, whether the Supreme Court ruling that came down after Donald Trump was convicted of those 34 felony crimes warrants any kind of relief or any kind of continuance or any kind of alteration of his 34 felony convictions. Now, I have a feeling, and Judge Hellerstein's ruling kind of dovetails nicely with this, I have a feeling Judge Merchan will say, no, not official acts. I deny your motion to dismiss your case based on the Supreme Court ruling, and I'm ready to proceed to sentencing in 2 days, because he said he's going to hand down that decision on September 16th. Donald Trump has already promised that he is going to run like the wind, at least figuratively, to appeals courts, both state and federal. It's an open question whether he has any legal opportunity to jump into federal court, but he said he's going to try to do it, and he's going to try to put a stop to his sentencing in those intervening 48 hours between the 16th and the 18th. So it's anybody's guess as to whether he'll be successful and whether that will put up another obstacle to his sentencing actually proceeding on September 18th that maybe the state court can't clear away. So that's going to be, a really interesting time between the 16th and the 18th, and it's just an unanswerable question as to whether he will proceed to sentencing on the 18th.
Glenn, does the fact that Donald Trump failed in his effort to get this thing removed to the federal court system just now, today, does that offer some type of insight or prediction in terms of how successful Donald Trump will or won't be when he tries to appeal this thing to the U.S. Supreme Court on the 16th, 2 days before his sentencing on the 18th?
It offers some insight. It's not precedent, but there's something that I often refer to as atmospheric precedent. Once you have federal court judges repeatedly ruling that, no, what Donald Trump did when he was committing these crimes in the context of our discussion here in violation of New York state law, what he did was the farthest thing imaginable from official presidential acts. That may not be precedent, but it is important, it's relevant, and it begins to paint the picture that courts are prepared to say, no, Donald Trump should not enjoy any kind of immunity, at least not for falsifying business records, to cover up hush money payments, to cheat in a presidential election. And I think by extension, that same rationale may end up applying to many of the acts that Donald Trump undertook on and around January 6th, where we are in the process of trying to get that same question answered. Is any of it official presidential conduct such that he can't be prosecuted for it? I think it's a good decision and ruling by Judge Hellerstein. I think it begins to set the tone and hopefully even the agenda, and hopefully Donald Trump will begin losing these immunity cases and arguments one after another.
Now, you had mentioned that this was an obstacle, a barrier that prosecutors have been able to overcome in terms of getting Donald Trump one day closer to sentencing. What is the next biggest obstacle that we're awaiting? Is it Donald Trump's appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court on the 16th? Is that the next big obstacle, the next big hurdle that we have to encounter here?
Yes, and even before he gets to the Supreme Court, the first thing he'll do, I predict, and Trump's lawyers have signaled he will do this, assuming Judge Merchan says, no presidential immunity for you, we're going to sentencing in 2 days on the 18th, he will first file an emergency stay with Judge Merchan. If it's rejected, he will file that same emergency stay with the New York Appeals Court, and simultaneously, he may also try to file something in the federal court to try to, belt and suspenders this thing, try to get some court to interfere with his upcoming sentencing date. And if all else fails, he'll try to bubble it up to the Supreme Court as quickly as possible. And because it is such a novel issue, it's really kind of the first time this legal challenge is being litigated and decided after the Supreme Court issued its unconstitutional, in my opinion, ruling granting presidents absolute immunity. I do think it will tend to kind of slow things down, maybe freeze things, albeit only temporarily. So, I think there are still those several hurdles that will have to be overcome before Judge Merchan will be in a position to pronounce sentence.
And finally, let's finish off with this. Can you explain how egregiously inappropriate it would be, given how few cases the U.S. Supreme Court actually hears, for them to take up not only yet another case from Donald Trump, but one that is so obviously belongs in the New York case system and that doesn't have any rationale to be moved over to the federal court system?
Brian, how many favors can this corrupt Supreme Court, at least the extreme right-wing bloc of 6, how many favors can they do for Donald Trump? Because they have done nothing but try to protect Donald Trump from the consequences of his own conduct and his own crimes. And that includes being adjudicated an insurrectionist by a state trial court as affirmed by a state appeals court, and then all of those textualists on the Supreme Court saying, well, we understand the text of the Constitution says an insurrectionist, after he takes an oath to support and defend the Constitution, is disqualified from holding office again. Nah, we're going to ignore that text of the Constitution. How many favors can this Supreme Court do for Donald Trump? Should they let this state court issue bubble up to the Supreme Court, jump into the federal system, and immediately bubble up to the Supreme Court within 48 hours? The answer is hell no. Will they? I'm done predicting what this corrupt 6-block, radical right wing of the Supreme Court will do, because they've made clear they're not honest brokers of the law. They have Donald Trump's back at every turn, even if they have to ignore or contradict the express language of the Constitution to give him the break that they seem desperate to give him.
Right. And what underscores all of that is the fact that this was all done prior to Donald Trump even taking office. The whole point of him committing these crimes and writing these checks, for example, was because he wanted to present himself in a good light to the electorate before he became president. So the notion then that the U.S. Supreme Court has some jurisdiction here is completely backwards. And yet the fact that you and I both have no idea whether that means that the U.S. Supreme Court won't still try anyway is a testament to how broken that court is and how willing they are to bend over backwards on his behalf.
Yeah, and it
basically
feels like the death of irony is what we're experiencing.
It is Wednesday, the 4th of September of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. He's working really hard at it, too. Precious, our little Yorkie, is our convalescing door girl, and we'll give you an update on her in just a few moments. So, in the interim, we will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? No one will, obviously. You know, it's a new day in America. That new day's been going on for quite a while, too. All I want for Christmas is a separation of church and state. Please? I'd like a separation of church and football, too. How about just sports in general? Yeah, okay. Well, that's a whole other tangent for another day. Let us give you a quick rundown on what is happening to our canine friends that reside in this mothership we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. In other places, it's also known as positively Third and Marie. Well, today, of course, is Wednesday, so Precious will be going in for her regular IV drip. And a quick rundown on her is that I was getting a little worried last couple of days, as well since I've been back. After Carol and Talia left, I could tell that little Precious was tuckered out. She was certainly glad to see me and very, I wouldn't say clinging, but she wanted to be right at my feet and up on my bed next to where I work and the desk where I work and staying close. And I like that, because, well, she's a little lover. But she had not really been eating much. Drinking water, that's good, but her appetite, that's one thing that we look at. And it could very well be, and this is what I suspect, is that she's being picky. Because when I decided that I'm going to put this leftover chicken and some potato things, potato slices, into the air fryer, and heat that up and eat it while watching the baseball game. Oh boy, both dogs wanted some of that, and she took a little bit of it. I'm not really into feeding them people food because we want to be concerned, especially with, well, onions or other type of things that could destroy a liver. With little Precious, I suppose it really doesn't matter at this point, but she was eating some of it right up to the point where I'm not supposed to feed her because of the fact that she's got to go in today for her IV drip, and she gets put under for that. So, well, I gave Gunner some too, because his story is that he goes in for his surgery today. I had mentioned that quite a while ago, so let me give you a quick reminder of what that entails. He being an English bulldog, a bulldog is one of those types of dogs that have folds. Mom, years and years and years ago, had a little Shar-Pei. Well, I wouldn't say little. Boy, that dog was a chunk. But a Shar-Pei named Gucci. And Gucci had major folds. So you have to take care of dogs that have folds. One part of the bulldog's issue is that the eye folds tend to want to fold into the eye, and the hairs on that area then scratch the eyeball. And Gunner has had a problem with tears coming down, and then they're salty, and they collect on his nose and create a kind of crust. So I'm constantly cleaning his nose so that doesn't happen. And so that surgery is to correct that problem. I guess he's going to tighten it up a little bit. Maybe a little bit of cosmetic surgery. Maybe that's what it is. But also, we have been on a diet. and he has lost some weight, and I'm curious how much he weighs at this point. I think he might be close to his optimum weight. He's looking it. People are all commenting on how great he looks, so he's probably getting back that, I wouldn't say he had a Mr. Potato Bod like old Elon does. Boy, talk about a, what do they call it, a high-value male? High-status male. High status, yeah. High-status males seem to have like a potato bod. Mr. Potato Bod. No, I don't want one. Okay, so maybe I'm just middling status. Maybe. Anyway, so Gunner will be put under also for his procedure. Now, my worry of little Precious's appetite might have been alleviated when she was so wholeheartedly wanting that chicken. So anyway, she crawled up. I wouldn't say crawled, but she climbed up the steps that we have. Rural we. I guess I've got to get used to that again. Well, that I have next to, the sofa and the various places. So she came up and slept on the bed twice last night. She got off, went into probably, I thought she was sleeping on the floor, but the last time that she went off the bed, she has ended up on the sofa. And so that means she climbed up her little step there to get up on the sofa and is still, snoozing away. So let her. We'll wake her in a bit because we have to get out the door as soon as, the final tag music is tagging away. All right, so she's doing okay, I hope. I don't know. We all love our little furry friends, I know. And I'm trying to just accept the obvious. She doesn't have much time, and it could never. We just don't know when. I mean, maybe I'm going to get the word this week. She's aging quite quickly, and that's indicative of this bone cancer. Thank you very much. Bone marrow. Let's be clear. Ooh. Anyway, it's leukemia. All right. So, with that stated, what else is happening in the world? Oh, my God. Okay, I've noticed that MAGA, and this is how I can tell they're very afraid, because every time something would come out about Trump being a dick or, a traitor or, a crook, a rapist, a felon, etc., 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 the MAGA people put up banners. So, for a while there, you had only seen, a few Trump-Pence banners that have just never been taken down. Even though Vance was in there. Maybe they heard, they said Vance, or people said Vance, and they heard Pence. You never know. These people are, shall we say, not the brightest bulbs in the world. No. But I think they got the word finally. Or maybe the local Republican group finally, I don't know, decided, you know what? Maybe we should print up some new things. Oh, yeah, maybe we should. They just figured it out. And you just never know, especially on the local level. You just never know. But every time something would come out, or Trump would make a misstep, or Harris Waltz, just being who they are, fills the world with such joy. Well, these people would put up some more MAGA swag. And so now, I noticed yesterday, people, and I saw them, usually these signs appear. It's like they do it in the dead of night. No, they were doing it in broad daylight. This is how scared they are. In broad daylight. And they weren't just leisurely doing this. When I say they, I am saying that in my trek from the bridge across town to my place, I saw no less than 3 or 4 people frantically putting up ultra MAGA banners to, I don't know, supplement or adorn the rest of their MAGA BS. Okay? Now, these are the group of people who insisted they had a constitutional right to put up not "Let's go Biden" or "Let's go Brandon," which was code for "fuck Biden." They put the actual printed, approved Trump colors, letters, etc. "Fuck Biden." And I'm not talking like a small little yard sign. I'm talking about a giant, like 16 by 16 banner. It was square. Huge. And if that wasn't bad enough, it was on the little kids' trek to get to the elementary school in town. All the while they are claiming our government schools are indoctrinating our kids. Yeah, to get along with people. You don't like that, apparently. They don't. That whole argument about they're trying to make me PC. Yeah, being a good neighbor, would you stop pissing in the stream? I have a constitutional right to piss in the stream. When I owned one of my boats in Sausalito at Gate 5, we weren't tied in to city services at that point. People, you'd go to the head. That's what you call the bathroom facilities, the restroom facilities on a floating vessel. You go to the head, and it was just a hole in there that you sat on, like one of those outdoor toilets that we used to go to back in the day. Maybe you guys didn't. But, you go to the rural areas and you go to, the outside bathroom and you sit there and it's just a hole going into a pit. Well, then people were just literally pooping and peeing in the bay. Now, I don't know. I mean, I grew up in, rural areas. I was aware of this kind of stuff. But, letting poop and pee disperse somehow and move about to another area didn't seem like a nice neighborly thing to do, in my opinion. It's one thing when you dug a hole on your own property and you're going to put lye in there and do the different kinds of things that you would do to, keep down the affluent issues that might cause people to have diphtheria or worse. But putting it into a water system that moves didn't seem like, I said, a neighborly thing to do. And what was their excuse for not tying in? It was okay, justified. And I'm talking about so-called environmental hippies. What was their excuse, their explanation, their justification? Well, the bay flushes twice a day. Oh, that's great. Okay. All right. Well, there were big fights over that. When I'm saying there were big fights, because there were a lot of people who did not want to tie in to city services because it was Big Brother or whatever. Now I come to find out all these people are probably MAGAs. A bunch of nincompoops who wanted just to be able to do whatever they wanted to do whenever they wanted to do it and fuck everybody else. My poop's floating over to your place, too bad. Ha ha. I mean, give me a break. Okay. Have I vented? I don't know. I have vented, but I don't know if I vented. Because I keep venting. Okay. Maybe it's better to be a slow venting volcano than one that just abruptly erupts. Nature can teach you. Okay, what do we have in store for you on this separation of church and state Smothered Benedict Wednesdays? Yes, indeed. Well, at the top there, Trump was swatted down by that judge in his New York case. Now it goes to Mershon. We'll see how that works out. I should have said in his many New York cases, because he's got a few on the rest of the menu. After raiding the homes of elderly Latino or Latina Democratic election volunteers, Texas MAGA Attorney General Ken Paxton is now threatening Democratic-leaning counties not to mail out voter registration forms. Okay, they just do it right in your face, It's like, hey, buddy, this is America. And you say, nah, this is the Republic of Texas. Yeah, well, remember the Alamo was to keep Texas a slave state, all right? Continuing on, a MAGA federal judge ruled New Mexico election regulators and prosecutors discriminated. This judge ruled the state discriminated against an election-denying MAGA group in refusing them access to sensitive voter registration rolls that included addresses, party affiliation, probably when they were home or not. All right. And a Federalist Society federal judge ruled that an Illinois law banning the concealed carry of firearms on public transit is unconstitutional. That's right. Your life and liberty is not nearly as important as that guy's right to kill you with a concealed weapon. Okay. After the break, we got some good news here at least. After the break, we move to the chef's table where facial recognition startup Clearview AI has been fined $33.7 million US by the Dutch data protection watchdog over an illegal database of faces. Well, they are facial recognition. You would expect it, but it's illegal. And senior EU ministers took a very public swipe at Hungary over its lack of respect for the bloc's values. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Before we tuck into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, a quick reminder to follow me on social media at Justice Putnam in most cases, so that you have quick access to the show notes and links diaries on Daily Co's, in which then you will be able to read the actual reports by the actual reporters. So follow me on social media at Justice Putnam. All right, this first offering is out of Raw Story by Matt Keeley with the New Civil Rights Movement blog. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton threatened to sue two large Democratic-leaning counties should they proceed with their plan to mail voter registration forms to eligible voters who are currently unregistered. Bexar and Harris counties have proposed using third-party vendors to mail the forms, though the plan is to only send them to people who are eligible to be registered. Paxton said that the forms could fall in the hands of those who are ineligible to vote, which would encourage them to register illegally. He thinks voting's like a drug. Okay, pal. At worst, it may induce the commission of a crime by encouraging individuals who are ineligible to vote to provide false information on the form, Paxton said. Oh, either way, it is illegal, and if you move forward with this proposal, I will use all available legal means to stop you! He hates America. The thing he hates more than America are Americans. Bexar and Harris counties both have high Latino populations, with nearly 20% of all Texan Latinos living in Harris County. Oh! He's a racist bigot. Who knew? Yep, Paxton has faced accusations of specifically trying to suppress the Latino vote following the raids on homes of Latino voting activists. The League of United Latino American Citizens called for an inquiry into civil rights violations. Well, we reported that here, didn't we? They sent it right to the DOJ. Let's see if Merrick Garland does anything. At least 6 LULAC volunteers had their homes raided by police and had voter registration materials seized, along with phones, computers, and other electronic devices. They want to know who you are, and they're calling us Big Brother. Paxton said the search warrants were part of an ongoing election integrity investigation into allegations of election fraud and vote harvesting. I still want to know what is so bad about going to a senior citizen's home, collecting people's ballots, and taking them to, the county registrar, or putting them into drop boxes. What is so wrong with that? That's ballot harvesting? They're not growing these things and going out and harvesting them. In their feeble minds, because probably what they've done is that, and it's happened because it happened in Georgia and it happened in the South, you would get guys harvesting these ballots and throwing them in the river. And who were they? They were the old white boys society with their little pointy hoods. LULAC said one of the people raided was Lydia Martinez, an 87-year-old member of the organization, and she was interrogated for hours. There is no evidence of widespread voter fraud in the 2022 elections in Texas or elsewhere in the United States, but Paxton's most recent probe, despite the raids, has led to no charges thus far. At the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. A federal judge says New Mexico election regulators and prosecutors discriminated against a Republican-backed group in refusing access to voter registration rolls. The ruling bars the state from refusing to turn over voter data to Voter Reference Foundation, bolstering the group's efforts to expand a free database of registered voters so that groups and individuals can take it upon themselves to try to find potential irregularities or fraud. Like the Stasi Quo. State prosecutors plan to appeal the ruling, said Lauren Rodriguez, a spokesperson for the New Mexico Department of Justice. The VoteRef.com website recently restored New Mexico listing to its searchable database of registered voters, including street addresses, party affiliations, and whether voters participated in recent elections. Election officials in several states and privacy advocates have raised alarms about a push by several conservative groups to gain access to sensitive state voter rolls. They say the list could find their way into the hands of malicious actors and that voters could be disenfranchised through intimidation. possibly canceling their registrations to avoid public disclosure of their home addresses and party affiliation. The Klan rides at night. Remember that, please. But Albuquerque-based U.S. District Court Judge James Browning ruled that state election regulators engaged in viewpoint-based discrimination and free speech violations in denying the Voter Reference Foundation access to voter data and by referring the matter to state prosecutors. This is what happens when you got rid of the Voting Rights Act, because this is exactly what it was supposed to prevent. The Foundation's VoteRef.com database includes voter information spanning more than 32 states and the District of Columbia. It is run by Gina Swoboda, chair of the Arizona Republican Party, and former President Donald Trump's 2020 re-election campaign in Arizona. Browning previously ruled that New Mexico authorities violated public disclosure provisions of the National Voter Registration Act by refusing to provide voter rolls to the same foundation, overriding a provision of a state law that restricts the use of voter registration data, which had been on there because of the Voting Rights Act. And he said, no more. The VoterRef.com site does not list whom people voted for. It preserves confidentiality under a program that shields victims of domestic violence or stalking. Addresses also remain confidential for more than 100 publicly elected or appointed officials in New Mexico, including Democrats and Republicans, enrolled in separate safety programs enacted in the aftermath of drive-by shootings on the homes of local lawmakers in Albuquerque in December of 22 and January of 23. And our little judge here said, now everybody can suffer. Associated Press staff bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A federal judge has ruled that an Illinois law banning the concealed carry of firearms on public transit is unconstitutional. U.S. District Judge Lane D. Johnston in Rockford ruled with 4 gun owners who filed a lawsuit in 2022 contending that their inability to carry weapons on buses and trains violated their Second Amendment right to self-defense. Johnston relied on a pivotal U.S. Supreme Court case from 2022 that established that gun laws must be consistent with conditions found in the late 1700s when the Bill of Rights was composed. No regulation on where weapons could be carried existed. We'll make them carry muskets then, pal. Illinois became the nation's last state to approve concealed carry in 2013. The law established a number of places that were off limits to guns, such as public arenas, hospitals, buses, and trains. Attorney General Kwame Raoul said through a spokesperson that he was reviewing the decision and would likely appeal. He noted that until there's a final judgment in the matter, gun owners should continue to abide by concealed carry provisions. Johnston's ruling currently applies only to the 4 plaintiffs who brought the lawsuit. Well, That brings us to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, Dr. Moreau Meets Me Too. Blink Twice is at its heart a dark satire about power, privilege, and rich men behaving badly. The rich man in this case is tech entrepreneur Slater King, Channing Tatum, who meets a young waitress Frida, Naomi Ackie, at a gala he's hosting, and within hours whisks her, all starry-eyed, and her friend Jess off to his private island for a luxury vacation. We know from real life that rich men and private islands are a bad combo. However, in this case, we are also told that Slater has stepped down from his own company for some past bad behavior, about which we never get full details, but can guess as things proceed that it probably involves his treatment of women. Frida and Jess aren't alone on the island. They're joined by other women, none of whom have known Slater for very long either before they were invited to his little paradise. Even before Jess shares with Frida her feelings that things aren't right on the island, we already know something's up. Frida wakes up with unexplained dirt under her nails, then Slater's assistant / buddy Vic, played by Christian Slater, really seems to dislike her despite her belief they've never met. First-time director and co-writer Zoe Kravitz does a good job at pacing throughout the film. That, along with the vivid color palette used in the set design and the use of unusual close-up angles, help build a beautiful, albeit otherworldly vibe that suggests, just like the colors of a venomous snake we see, the island may be a place of sinister goings-on. While venturing close to heavy-handedness at times, Blink Twice, not unlike 2022's Island Set the Menu, does a wonderful job ever so slowly building to its absolute perfect ending. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. In a move exemplifying why gerrymandering is a danger to American democracy, the Utah legislature approved a constitutional amendment ballot measure to give itself the power to veto or alter a citizen ballot measure. In a special session August 21st, the Utah Senate voted 20-8 and the House 54-21 to place the constitutional amendment before the voters November 5th. The move comes after the 2018 Better Boundaries Proposition 4 citizen initiative passed, authorizing a bipartisan advisory redistricting commission, setting new rules for fair maps, and forbidding gerrymandering. In March 2020, the legislature passed Senate Bill 200, which watered down Proposition 4 and gave the legislature a larger role. The new commission did draw fair voting maps in 2021, which the legislature ignored, gerrymandering their own maps and locking in power for Republicans. The League of Women Voters of Utah sued, arguing the legislature overstepped its authority. In July 2024, the Utah Supreme Court unanimously agreed, overturning a ruling favoring the legislature. The legislature's new workaround amendment not only gives itself power to veto or amend Proposition 4, but any future citizen ballot initiative on any issue. A coalition is already mobilizing in opposition to this assault on the citizen initiative process. We have more at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1875. That was the day anti-black violence erupted into a 2-day massacre in Clinton, Mississippi. As many as 2,500 black Republicans and their families met at Moss Hill, a former plantation destroyed during the Civil War. The day was one of festivities and political speeches ahead of the fall elections. The county Republican Party invited local Democrats to debate. The Democratic state senatorial candidate did did address the crowd. The editor of a local Republican newspaper and Union officer, Captain H.T. Fisher, followed him. Soon a group of white Democrats began to heckle Fisher as he spoke. Republican politicians attempted to quell the growing tensions. Almost immediately, however, the heckling whites opened fire on the crowd. Women and children fled in all directions as black Republican forces rushed to defend themselves and their families. By the end of the day, 3 whites and 5 blacks were killed. Clinton's mayor fed off rumors of black retaliation. He called upon white paramilitary forces, the White Liners, from surrounding areas for assistance. Several hundred answered the call and filled the town's streets. Historian Melissa Janczewski-Jones notes that though heavily armed, the White Liners accompanied white locals as they rampaged door to door looking for black Republicans to murder. After 2 days, as many as 50 black Clintonians were killed by white Democrats looking to end Reconstruction and regain political control of Mississippi. A Senate committee would later conclude, quote, "The riots at Clinton were part of a special purpose on the part of the Democrats to break up the meetings of Republicans and inaugurate an era of terror, not only in those communities, but throughout the state." Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 60 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs over 100. Winds light and variable, sunny throughout the day. Clear skies overnight with lows near 60, winds light and variable. Then mainly sunny tomorrow with near record high temperatures of over 106, winds light and variable. Pollen is rated as none here in our little burg of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 33 parts per million, and that daytime UV index has notched up 1 level into the high range from moderate and is now standing at level 6. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.06 inches, visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 82%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. It is. London is 65 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 73 and partly cloudy. Rome is 88 and sunny. Kabul is 75 and clear. Hong Kong is 93 and clear. Tokyo is 76 and partly cloudy. Auckland, New Zealand is 49 degrees and fair. San Francisco, California is 58 and partly cloudy with a small craft advisory on the bay and offshore. Chicago, Illinois is 69 degrees and sunny. And New York, New York is 74 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Mike, reporter at the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche. Here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. The Dutch data protection watchdog yesterday, Tuesday, issued facial recognition startup Clearview AI with a fine of $33.7 million US over its creation of what the agency called an illegal database of billions of photos of faces. The Netherlands Data Protection Agency, or DPA, also warned Dutch companies that using Clearview's services is also banned. The data agency said that New York-based Clearview has not objected to this decision and is therefore unable to appeal against the fine. But in a statement emailed to the AP, Clearview's chief legal officer, Jack Mulcair, said that the decision is unlawful, devoid of due process, and is unenforceable. Really? The Dutch agency said that building the database and insufficiently informing people whose images appear in the database amounted to serious breaches of the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, otherwise known as GDPR. Facial recognition is a highly intrusive technology that you cannot simply unleash on anyone in the world, DPA Chairman Eliza Acton said. If there is a photo of you on the internet, and doesn't that apply to all of us, then you can end up in the database of Clearview and be tracked. This is not a doom scenario from a scary film, nor is it something that could only be done in China, he said. DPA said that if Clearview does not halt the breaches of the regulation, it faces non-compliance penalties of up to $5.6 million on top of the fine. In June, Clearview reached a settlement in an Illinois lawsuit alleging its massive photographic collection of faces violated the subject's privacy rights, a deal that attorneys estimate could be worth more than $50 million. Clearview did not admit any liability as part of the settlement agreement. At the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Senior government ministers from Ireland, Luxembourg, and Belgium took a very public swipe at Hungary yesterday, Tuesday, raising questions about whether Prime Minister Orban's stridently nationalist cabinet respects European Union values and standards. Hungary took over the 27-nation bloc's rotating presidency in July. Orban immediately made a surprise trip to Moscow to meet with Vladimir Putin, angering several of his EU counterparts who insisted that the Hungarian leader did not represent them. I will also ask my colleague, Human Affairs Minister Janos Boka, if tomorrow he plans a trip to Moscow, because this seems to be a habit for Hungarian politicians, Luxembourg Foreign Minister Xavier Bettel said at a meeting in Budapest. Beyond its ties with Russia, Orban's government has irritated its EU partners by promoting hostility to migrants and LGBTQ+ rights, and by controlling public media. Millions of euros in EU funds have also been frozen over concerns about democratic backsliding in Hungary. Bettel His Belgian counterpart, Hadja Lahib, and Irish European Affairs Minister Jennifer Carroll McNeil said that they held joint meetings with members of the Hungarian media, civil society, and LGBTQ plus representatives ahead of yesterday's meeting, which Boca chaired. The ministers made their statements directly to a Hungarian TV camera without prompting from reporters. It was an unusual and potentially embarrassing public display for Hungary, given that EU member countries rarely criticize each other in public. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goère. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.